Welcome, everybody. This is Banking Plus. I am the publisher, John Durso, joined with Dan Weckerly, our editor in chief, and Wade Huckabay of All America Bank. And Wade, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my
And
God.
where exactly are you right now?
I'm in Mustang, Oklahoma, which is a part of Oklahoma City. It's within Oklahoma City.
I know we want to learn a lot about All America Bank and the history of the bank. And so, Dan, why don't I turn it over to you and I'll share the screen and we'll pull up the All Americans website.
Sure. So these are kind of a melding together of a profile of your organization and how it works and why it works and sort of what the thinking is that distinguishes you in your market as far as the services that you offer and the way that you offer them. And then part of it is us getting to know you as well. So I guess we can start, John, with the organization. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So for people watching right now, I have All America Bank's website up, and you can see that they have. Let me go to the tab there. We have their interest rates flowing. Of course, the interest rates are only good as of the date of this recording, so please ignore all of the interest rate related things. But one of the things that I found very fascinating from the website was when we went to the history. And there are some banks here that Dan and I interview for Banking Plus that are publicly traded, some are family owned. And you guys have a very rich history back to 1927. And one of the things that really jumped out at me was your ancestor, T.C. Huckabee, beginning his career with Planters State Bank as a cashier, a bookkeeper, and a janitor. And then jumping to 1935, he becomes president of the bank at age 27. I was wondering if you could fill us in on what you know about the dealings of the banking industry back then and how TC became president.
Right. Well, I asked my granddad one time, "Why did you become a banker?" And he said, "Well, he lived in Castor, Louisiana, which is a small town in Louisiana." But he said he looked around town and he thought the people that had it the best were the bankers. So when he got out of, I don't know if they had high school back then or what, but when he got out of school, his primary school, he went to a trade school where he learned how to use a posting machine. And in the old days, you had these ledger cards, and it might be, each card had a different expense account on it, but you ran them through a posting machine. So he learned how to do that, and this trade school promised him a job if he graduated from there. And I'm guessing he wasn't there more than 6 months to a year at that trade school, but he opted not to take their job. So he moved to Baton Rouge and rode on an ice cream truck with his brother. And after about a year of that, he went back to the trade school and said, "You remember that job you promised me? I'd like to take it." So
Wow.
they set him up, and with the clothes on his back, he rode on a train from Castor, Louisiana, to Mountain Park, Oklahoma. And there was a small bank in Mountain Park, and it was just him and the president. So he was the teller, he was the janitor, and he ran that posting machine. And the president, he made loans and made decisions for the bank. Well, the Great Depression hit, and the bank was failing, and the president committed suicide at his desk.
Holy
Gee.
And
mackerel.
we still have the suicide note, but it said, "Mr. Huckabee's a good man. He can run the bank." It's got blood on it. And so my sister has uh, that suicide note in our safety deposit box.
Oh,
But anyway, the regulators, they closed the bank anyway. And he went around, he was determined to open it back up. So he went around town and raised $10,000 as capital. and he drove the money to Oklahoma City to the state banking department and says, "Here's my capital. I want to reopen that bank." And they said, "Well, that's great and everything, but you forgot about the reserve requirement." So he had to drive back to Medicine Park and raise another $1,000 that was required for the reserve requirement. And he said that thousand was harder to raise than the 10,000 was.
Oh,
But at any rate, that's how he opened the bank back up, and he became the president.
and that was it Pink Planter State Bank?
Yes, yes, it's planters.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine what that the initial president who committed suicide. I mean, just the
Right.
state of everything back then at the time. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was the Dust Bowl, and I mean, dirt was everywhere. There's no rain, and they didn't do crop rotations. He said it was the hardest time of his life. Was the Dust Bowl, and they didn't have air conditioning, so they would hang wet blankets on their windows to try to filter the dirt
Hmm,
out as the air came in. But yeah, it was a hard time
that's a
back
hard
then.
life.
Yep.
Oof. So take
Just
us.
so I can trace the lineage a little bit, is this on your mom's side or your dad's side?
This is my dad's side.
Okay.
Yeah.
So take us through a little bit more of the history after 1935. I have the site up, and I'm kind of going through the lineage here and the timeline. Um,
Okay.
so that's how the bank opened up, and it seems like you referred to TC as your great grandfather, was it?
He was just my grandfather.
Oh, just your grandfather. Okay, so now you're third
Yeah. Yeah.
generation here. Um, so give us a
Right.
quick
Right. I'm
background
third
between those
generation.
thoughts.
Okay. So uh, my granddad, he had backers, of course, that were backing him as far as bank stock was concerned, and over time he had he bought everyone out from their stock where he owned the bank 100%. And then my father, he got out of college and he was an electrical engineer out of the University of Oklahoma. And he made an arrangement with my granddad or his dad that he'd work in Snyder, Oklahoma for 5 years just to learn the family business. And then he'd go pursue his electrical engineering degree. Well, in uh, about 1969, actually 1968, uh, when he was, getting ready to depart and go get his electrical engineering degree, my granddad said, "Well, I drove through a small town today called Mustang, Oklahoma. If you'd like to put a bank there, I'll help you do it." And so my dad chartered a bank called First Mustang State Bank in Mustang, and that's where I am now.
Hmm.
And so that was how the second generation got started. And then my brother and I, we went to college in the 80s. And when we got out of college, the oil bust was in full swing. There was no jobs in Oklahoma, hardly. The unemployment rate was between 10 and 15%. And most people were leaving town, mainly going to Dallas to get a job. But so we went to work for the bank, and I hadn't planned on going to work for the bank. I'm not sure. I don't think my brother planned on going to work for the bank either. But that's how that shaped up. There just wasn't any other jobs,
Yeah, out
so
of
we went to
necessity,
work.
right?
Right, right.
Had you thought as a youngster about a career? Whether did you grow up wanting to be something? Obviously, maybe a banker. I don't know, but based on the lineage, perhaps. But what did you want to be when you grew up? When you were a kid?
Well, I wasn't sure, but I didn't want to work for my dad. So,
And we see how that worked out.
yeah, he was as strict as could be, and uh, you didn't sleep in on the weekends. You were doing special projects out in the yard. You're mowing the lawn every day. There was chores when you got home from school, and
Did your brothers and sisters all have a list of responsibilities that were just strictly yours?
well, we didn't. Uh, there was no quote list, but we had to feed the dogs. We had some dog pens that we had to clean out, and that was a daily deal. And mow the lawn. We lived on 5 acres, so there was
Hmm.
quite a bit of stuff to do
That's a
around
big
there.
lawn.
Yeah, and
How many siblings do you have?
I have one sister and uh, one brother. My sister's the oldest, and she got a petroleum engineering degree at the University of Oklahoma. And so she went to work for an oil company when she got out of college. But my brother, he had an economics degree, and I had a finance degree. And so, but come to think of it, I was probably more into computers than banking at the time. Computers were starting, to become popular,
Are you the
and
middle or are you're the youngest?
I'm the youngest. Yeah, we're all 2 years apart.
So when you started in banking, were they using computers or were they still on a paper method?
Well, uh, we in 1982 we had our own in-house mainframe here at Mustang, and then my at the time there were three banks in the family. We had my granddad's bank. It was Bank of the Wichitas. Then my granddad had bought another bank. These are single location banks called Southwest State Bank out of Sentinel, Oklahoma. And then we had First Mustang State Bank here in Mustang. So my dad bought a computer and then he wired their banks in. So we did the servicing for the other two banks over a period of time. Uh, but my granddad, he said, there's been a lot of changes in my life, and I've been against every one of them. And he did not want to go on computers. And but we would get examined. I mean, this is the '80s, and there was not a computer in the bank. It was the late '80s, and the regulators were really down on him about it. And uh, so eventually, he allowed the computers to creep in, very slowly.
But your granddad sounds like he liked things the way he liked them, and good luck trying to get him to do something different that he didn't want to do. Right.
Right, right.
So you had one computer that was shared between three banks. Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah, it was a Unisys mainframe, and it was located in Mustang. And then through the phone lines, we hooked in the bank in Sentinel, which was Southwest State Bank, and the bank in Snyder, which was Bank of the Wichitas.
Wow.
Back then, it was just a single line. These were dumb terminals. You know, they were slow. You inquire something, and then it'd come in line by line across the screen.
Wow.
But
Wow. We
yeah,
were Dan and I. We were talking the other day about different technology advancements in banking. And you had your passbook savings accounts and the printers. I mean, what now that you see AI coming down the pike, and we'll get to more questions about that. But what in your experience, what has been the most technologically significant advancement in banking so far?
the most technological. Oh boy.
I mean, there
Well,
you you you, you
it's
saw
got to be computers, of course.
but you saw no computers to computers, but you also saw the computers of the 90s and then the introduction of a Windows based database system,
Right. Right. Yeah.
which is,
Yeah.
kind of
That's
like
right.
going from,
And, you know, the software vendor that we're using at the time, you know, you would have a Windows looking terminal, but it really wasn't Windows through and through to the database. They were kind of screen scraping and making it look like it was all Windows, but it really wasn't.
yeah.
And so, yeah, that was the Windows was a big deal, but yeah, just computers and the scanning that we do now is really advanced. In the old days, we would get up, walk to the file room, get a customer's file. We don't do that anymore. We just go to a computer and we have all the documents are scanned in and we can see them right on our screen. So yeah, there's been a lot of changes.
Wow.
And in the 90s, let's see, the internet became popular, well, started becoming popular in about 1996, the way I remember it. And that scared me to death because, I'm I'm 8 years into my banking career and all this technology is coming at you and I'm thinking, how are we going to be able to compete because of the cost? To be everybody, you pull up their bank on the internet and it'd say under construction. It
Right.
said that for like 3 or 4 years, or maybe even 10 years for some banks.
Mm.
But there was a big push to claim what your domain name was.
Yep.
And everybody was rushing to secure the domain name. And then they just made a homepage that said under construction. And they really weren't doing anything else behind the scenes. Many of them weren't. But
That was
yeah,
just an effort to keep the domain name away from a competitor with a similar name. You
right.
stake that claim early, and it doesn't even matter if you don't do anything with it, but you've got it.
Yeah, exactly. But that was a scary time for me because I wasn't sure we were going to be able to make it.
Mm.
And so yeah.
Well, but see, there's a huge difference now, though. I mean, so you came back. I'm looking at the timeline again, and I'm at 2008 now, and you're named president of All America Bank. And
Right.
was that a new bank or was that a rebrand of one of the three?
It it was a rebrand. We were First Mustang State Bank and we were a single location in Mustang, Oklahoma. Well, it was against the law to branch your bank back in the old days. But the savings banks could, and they were out competing all these Oklahoma banks because they could freely branch wherever they wanted. And so they changed the law a little bit where you could move your location and then branch back to where your bank originally was. And so we did that. So we went from one location to two locations. So we moved our bank to Oklahoma City and we branched back to Mustang and we renamed it All America
Hmm.
Bank at the same time.
And now today, you have how many branches?
Well, we have eight, but uh, in 1993, uh, my brother and my sister and me, and then we had three cousins. We went on the board of Bank of the Wichitas, my granddad's bank in Snyder, and the board of Southwest State Bank in Sentinel. That was 1993. In 2000, we bought out our cousins. And so then it was just the Huckabees. And then in 2015, we merged all of our locations together. Well, my brother, he was working at Bank of the Wichitas. And once they changed the branching laws to where it wasn't so onerous, we opened up, 3 other branches and through that bank. And so when we merged, they were already existing branches, but there were 8 of them. And
Mm.
so we had 2, and Bank of the Wichita's had 5 locations if you include the mortgage company, and then Southwest State Bank had 1 location. So that's how it came about that we have 8 locations.
Okay, so you kind of just pulled them all together into one larger entity and just wrapped a big bow on it, right?
Yes, the compliance was killing us. We were doing everything 3 times,
Yeah,
and we thought this is ridiculous. We need to put these banks together so we only have to do it once.
yeah.
When you're thinking about writing policies, it's gotten quite complicated, to say the least.
If there was anything you could go back and do over or do faster, knowing what you know now as it pertains to putting those banks together, what would it be?
Well, we would have probably I would have probably wanted to merge those banks on an earlier date, but I, you only have so much money to expand, and so I can't think of anything I would have done different.
Okay. Or is your family still working in the bank today?
Yes, my brother's the CEO, I'm the president, and my sister is the CMO. She threw in the towel on petroleum engineering and came to work for the bank. I think that was about 15 years ago.
Wow.
And are your parents gone? Are they your parents are no
Uh,
longer with us?
my mom's still alive. My father passed away 5 years ago this month,
Oh
and
wow.
of course my grandparents, they're gone. But uh, so it's just me and my brother and sister, and we we've issued stock a couple of times just so that we could grow. And so we don't own 100% of the bank, but we have a
Hmm.
controlling interest in the
Are there
bank.
any stories related to that dynamic? I mean, working that closely with siblings, is that worked out? Does it not always work out?
Yeah, it's it's amazing how much we fought when we were kids, but how good of friends we are now.
All right. So, what did you fight about with as kids? What were those bones of contention? Like, who gets the prize in the cereal box, right? Stuff like that.
Yeah, those kind of things. Who gets a bigger piece of cake? That kind of stuff. But or my parents would go out of town, so my sister was in charge of us, so
Uh,
we'd be undermining her and
and
that
that's
kind of
always
stuff.
trouble. That's just
Yeah,
trouble.
yeah,
So is your sister
yeah.
the oldest sibling?
Yes. Yeah, she's the oldest.
Were there were there any influential moments in your youth that you felt contributed to your work ethic, your determination, or even how you're running the bank today?
Right. Well, we were always into sports. My sister, she was into cheerleading, gymnastics. Uh, my brother and I, we played football. As we got older, I joined the wrestling team, and my brother joined the tennis team, which are individual sports. And that teaches you a lot of discipline, uh, because it's not like being on the football team and you can blame your teammate for losing the game. It's just you going out there when you're in wrestling or you're playing tennis,
Mm,
and nobody's responsible for what happens out there other than yourself. And it's your success is tied to how hard you worked up to that point. So, yeah, I think athletics in high school was a big contributor to work ethic. And my dad, he put work ethic in your brain. You didn't sleep in on the weekends. You're doing yard work or something. And I think it's it's kind of non-obvious until you have some successes at an early age, and then you figure out, hey, the harder you work, the easier it gets.
Tell us a little bit more about your mom. We've talked about your dad a lot, and so
Okay.
what was your mom like?
Uh, she graduated from the University of Oklahoma. She was a drama major. Uh, but my parents divorced in 1978. And, but my mom, she doesn't live far from here. She lives on her own, and she's a great part of the family, but she has more of the artsy side of the brain going. She's a free spirit. My dad was very analytical. So,
Yeah.
uh, but that was the reason, I started when my parents divorced that summer, that first summer, my dad wanted to keep an eye on us. So the three of us, he got us jobs working in the bank, and we were mainly just filing checks. We were doing everything no one else wanted to do. And so I don't know if that broke the child labor laws or not, but we were working 9 to 5 all summer long. And I think that was the reason why I didn't want to work in the bank when I got older. But it's funny
And
how
yet here
things
you
work
are.
out.
I think it's interesting, and you can see somebody somewhere was extremely creative because as we're sitting here and we're talking to you, I notice you're wearing a Redneck Bank golf shirt.
Right. Yeah.
That's really initially how Wade, you and I met. Is I stumbled upon the Redneck Bank website one day. A friend had told me about it, and Dan and I are always looking for interesting things to share with our people. And here it is, redneck.bank. Could you just tell us a little bit about how the heck this came about? Because this is one of the more interesting things I've ever seen.
Right. Well, as I told you, the internet, and I mean, to my recollection, the internet started becoming popular about 1996. That's when I first, got an email and that kind of thing. And but then it's after now, fast forward 5 years. Now we're in the early 2000s, and I looked around and I noticed that we're having to borrow money from the Federal Home Loan Bank in order to have enough money to loan out. And it we started borrowing more and more money so we'd have money to loan. And I couldn't figure out what was going on, but I I guessed that the big banks like Bank of America or whoever were opening lines on or accounts online, and they were sucking that money out of our communities right out from under our noses without us knowing. So people in the that was my guess, and so I went to my dad and brother and said, if we're gonna be bankers, we got to get on the internet. I, we were on the internet. You could view your stuff. You could look up your loan or look and see how much money was in your account. But that was all the functionality, was just viewing it. And so uh, there's a guy named Robert Mendez, and he works at Bank on it, and they network for banks. They, security and all of that stuff. And he told me that he worked at a bank in Bonita, Oklahoma, and he started a bank that specialized in HSA accounts, the health savings accounts. And they branded it that way. And they had one product, and that was to get. That was a sound effect on the website, I think. But
Made me jump.
We'll get
yeah,
to
I
that
think
in a
that was
second. We'll get to that in a second. Yeah.
But anyway, he said, Wade, I'll help you. You can be whoever you want on the internet. Because we had 3 websites, and 2 of them were rural banks, and we had like cattle. Who from California is going to open an account at a little bank in Oklahoma that has cattle on their website. And so he did some focus groups and he came up with 4 bank names to look at. And at the time, there were 9,000 banks on the internet. I think there's about half of that now, about 4,500 or so. And I looked at those names and it just took the wind out of me because how are we going to get noticed on the internet when there's 9,000 banks on there? And so I was sitting right here where I am now, and I put a thesaurus on one leg and a dictionary on the other leg, and I started at A, and I started typing in these names to see if they were taken, and I became obsessed with it. I went. I started at 10 in the morning and I finished about midnight. But about 10 o'clock at night, I skipped lunch and everything. I went home and I started up again on my home computer. And I got to the R's. I hadn't got to Redneck yet, but I got to the R's. And the name Redneck Bank came to me at that point in time. And so I had 135 possible bank names on a sheet of paper, and I put Redneck Bank right in the middle. And then I took it to our officer meeting the next day. And the 2 oldest people in the room, which was my dad and another senior officer, they liked the name the best. And all the younger people poo pooed it and said it'll never work. And so we had this great name, we thought, but we didn't know what to do with it. And so uh, Robert, once again, oh, another thing on these bank names, if you register, you register an LLC or whatever through the Secretary of State in Oklahoma, if it has the word bank in it, you have to get approval from the state banking department to use that name. So Robert's saying, no matter what name it is, we got to get approval from the state banking department, and you can run it just as a DBA, doing business as. And so that was our plan. And we weren't going to open up a different corporation and all that. We were just going to make it all one the same. And so we fumbled around with the bank name for about 3 months. And we found this marketing lady in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Her name is Cindy Ford. And she mocked up a homepage, and it was a grandpa on a porch in a rocking chair whittling while his grandson sat in front of him. And so we were going to get together and talk about this. And so that day it was a huge snowstorm. So we all go to bank on it in Oklahoma City. And it's snowing so hard, this lady from Tulsa can't get down. So she logs in. We can see her computer screen in this conference room. This is about 2007, I'm guessing, or maybe 2008. And no, 2007, I think. And everybody talked about it for a while. Well, I had one of our co-employees were there, and his name's Johnny. I said, Johnny, you told me your brother would be the first one that opened an account at this bank. And because it's Redneck Bank, I said, would he open an account at this bank that we're looking at with the grandpa? And he said, no. And I told everybody in the room, I said, this is a perfect example of what we don't want to do. We got this great name. They're going to come to the website and then immediately go somewhere else because it's boring. I said, we need to do something. Everybody else has marble floors, marble columns on their website, and they're doing all this stuff for everybody. And we need to do something that just runs right up against the grain of everything. And so Cindy's going, well, will you promise you won't fire me? And she starts, you can hear her typing. And she flashed up on the screen that horse plus the font of Redneck Bank with the red background. And everybody started laughing. And I go, congratulations, you just designed our debit card. And so that was the beginning of it. But it was Cindy Ford. It seems obvious now, the humor, but it was non-obvious at the time. But Cindy Ford's the one that figured out that humor was the way to go. And so then you got to figure out how to do the humor without offending anybody. And she did that through animals and objects. She said, nowhere on this site will we ever have a human reference. It'll be animals and objects only. And so that's what we did. And so my brother, sister, and me, we'd get off to the side and we'd be going through these pages trying to figure out funny things to do, jokes, like the outhouse. We thought that was hysterical for the outhouse to be our login icon and stuff like that. But,
Wait, I got to tell
you
you,
know, Cindy, she's still, go ahead.
yeah, no, I got to tell you, it's one of the most outstanding things I've ever found on the internet, let alone from a bank website. Hats off to you guys for just being brilliant here. Many times when any industry, any company pushes the envelope, they are going to get backlash and they are going to get people that tell them that they're crazy. And I think this is and it's not just the design of it. You guys are leaning into this thing so hard. It's beautiful. When you take the cursor and surf around, and we talked about a noise you heard earlier, Dan. I'm chasing the fly around with the mouse, and it's making the fly noise. And the website is interactive. See, I can.
Well, if you click on login, the fly will go into outhouse.
Look at that.
What I appreciated,
Oh my
and
God, that's great.
John and I probably skirt our way through, I'm going to say, like a dozen bank websites a week, sometimes 2 or 3 dozen bank websites a week. And they all look, because you've obviously strategically made the decision to swing the pendulum way away from that. But they all look the same. The color, it's muted gray and green or blue. And as soon as John sent me this, I was like, we got to find these people. This is the most brilliant. I agree with him. Like, not only out there, but unapologetically out there. I mean, there's brands that do wacky things just to do wacky things. This is not a wacky thing just to be wacky. This is a wacky thing because it's who you are, and I can't even express how much I love this. And I could hug you for it.
So
Cindy figured it out. I just came up with the name, but it was a group effort.
Well, clearly this was a group. This doesn't happen by one person. So
right,
I'm sure there were some people that were more influential than others, but this I think is indicative of just like a boatload of creativity.
So, how did you get it past everybody? Like, how did it?
Well,
there has to be people in your bank that are in charge of risk and in charge of operations, and the people whose job is to keep everyone in the bank from going to jail, right? So,
right.
You guys created this.
Time,
we got the look, and what happened after that?
Okay, well, luckily we didn't know what we were doing.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, it really is. So at the time we had 3 charters. So we came up with 3 internet bank names. We had AmericaNet Bank, which was the internet division of All America Bank here in Mustang. And we had some outside stockholders in this bank. And then we had the bank in Sentinel, Oklahoma called Southwest State Bank. So we came up with eVantage Bank. And that was the internet division of Southwest State Bank. And because we owned Bank of the Wichitas 100%, we made Redneck Bank the internet division of Bank of the Wichitas because we thought it might be upsetting to the other stockholders that you're just wasting our money, creating all this crazy stuff. And so that's the reason it wound up at Bank of the Wichitas. And so we designed these three websites, and you got to remember back in the early 2000s, there wasn't software readily available to service people on a deposit account all over the country. So we were, you know, duct taping software pieces together to come up for a website that actually was functional. And so we spent about $1 million and worked for over a year to put these three websites together. Well, then we would go to Google, and like eVantage Bank was one. We'd type in eVantage Bank. We'd be on page 3, and we were typing it in exactly by its name. And we figured out you had to pay Google money on these keywords that people were clicking on. So we, with eVantage, we started spending $10,000 a month bidding keywords to the western part of the United States on eVantage Bank. And then America Net Bank, which was a division of All America, we were spending $10,000 a month on that to Google to big keywords going to the northeast part of the United States. And then we sat around for a while with Redneck trying to figure out what to do because it had been on the internet for a good 10 months and we were opening one or two accounts a month. And the other sites, they were opening 10 accounts a month, maybe. And so we weren't getting anywhere. And so we put up 2 billboards in Lawton, Oklahoma that had Redneck Bank on them. And I got a picture of it. I can send it to you. And the hits, we put those up in October. And in December, we got 5,000 hits. Hmm. Well, old Johnny, he's in our call center. He's got 4 people in there, and we have 4 separate phone lines. So depending on which number they called, we'd answer the phone, eVantage Bank, American Net Bank, or Redneck Bank. But that one website got 5,000 hits, and we're high-fiving going, oh, this is great. Well, the hits in January went to 250,000. And then our eyes, we're scared at this point because
what have we done?
These people are opening accounts and they get a busy signal when they call us. So we started knocking out walls in this call center, and before we could get them taped in and sheetrocked, we get to March and the hits go to 1.2 million just for the month of March.
Wow.
And we're opening 350 accounts a day. And we did not own the piece of software. You gather the information through the web, but then you got to transfer it to your core banking system. Mm-hmm. Well, we didn't own that software. I'm not even sure it existed at the time, unless you wrote it yourself. And so we put on the Redneck site, on those products, we put sold out and undid the link. And then we were bringing in people from all of our locations, and we were working 24/7. We had about 10 computers around a board table, and it took about 15 minutes per account to get it on the system and order their debit card and all that stuff. And we didn't even own a phone system to organize these calls, so we bought a phone system real fast, and we put in 14 lines. And we went from 4 people in our call center to 16. We're adding cubicles, moving desks in.
What expectations did you have for this when you first launched it? When the site went up, I mean, did you go, whatever we get, we get?
I had no idea of the power of the internet, the volume. And so anyway, we turn on this phone system with 14 lines and it goes, and there's 14 people waiting on hold for 40 minutes were the wait times. And they were upset by the time they got to us. They were mad as could be. But also we had radio stations calling us just to hear us answer the phone, Redneck Bank. and we'd be live on the air. Our call center people would, but AT&T called and they said, "What are you all doing down there? You're,
You're breaking the
you're,
system.
you're saying you're getting 1,000 calls a day." They thought we were running an escort service or something.
My God.
But so anyway, after about 6 or 8 months, it settled down. But we had to keep sold out. We ran out of capital. You got to put $1 of your own money in for every $10 people are depositing. And so we kept that sold out on there for a couple of years
Oh,
before we had room to open it up again. And so
wait.
anyway,
Did you
So
that's
I have to ask, like, were you thinking about where this success came from? I mean, is it just sort of the appeal of the kind of southern,
well,
like the fact that like Green Acres is still being rerun today. So there's that kind of charm and affection toward the southern sort of lifestyle, or was it just so far out from traditional banking that people were attracted to it?
I think in order to get, we were concerned that people wouldn't believe it. And so we had $1 minimum opening deposit, and we thought, well, they'll risk $1 to see if it's real. We did have a credibility problem. Nobody believed it. And the volume of calls to the state banking department in Oklahoma, people were their whole switchboard got bogged down because people were calling saying, "Is this a real bank? I want to open an account." And they're going, "Yeah, they approve the name, because they're our primary regulator." And
holy crap.
so, yeah, it was
So
a very stressful time.
so I know you, and I'm catching you off guard here because you probably don't have the numbers. Um, but since you turned on the website and you started Redneck Bank, do you have any
Right.
idea how many accounts and how many millions of dollars in deposits it's generated for the bank?
Uh, Over a time period of time, it'd be a lot more than that. But our online right now is about 475 million. But when Redneck took off, uh, we opened accounts in all 50 states within 50 days. It,
Wow.
I mean, people from everywhere. And California was the number one. I was worried about opening an account in California, and they were number one. And Oklahoma was number two. And Texas was number three. Florida was four. And believe it or not, New York was five.
Oh
Wow.
my
Those
god!
were the top account opening states. And it may be just based on population. I don't know.
People
But
hear
it
about it. I
went
mean,
viral.
this was the viral version, but it was really before social media. It was literally people telling people about it, right?
Yes, I think so. And is it Nerd Wallet? It's
Yeah.
or Fat Wallet or Nerd.
Nerd wallet.
One of them put it on their site, and I think that drove a
Yeah.
lot of hits. But I
Oh, it's
think
genius.
our original card had just the horse and the Redneck Bank lettering, and I think they wanted that card. They wanted to, I go to Wendy's and I hand them the card, and they're going, "Where'd you get this?" And
Wow.
I think they wanted the card just to show their friends. I don't know. We've since redesigned it, and people are asking for the horse back. So we might have to.
Hey, you got to
Of
give them what
course
they
they are.
want. You got to give them what they
Sure
want.
they are.
But
So, what kind of
you have to
opposition?
get these card designs approved by Visa. So we sent the original card design to Visa, and they declined it.
Of course.
And I was devastated. We'd spent $1 million. We're right here at the end to get online, and they deny the card design. And we call them. We go, "Why'd you deny this?" And they said, "Because it's not real." And we go, "Yeah, it is." And we showed them where the site was,
Genius.
and finally they approved it after that. But yeah,
Outside of Visa, did you have internal people, like people in charge of risk, that have been really tempering some of these things? I mean, how did you? Because having a past bank background, I immediately think, how the heck did this get approved internally? Like but it sounds like everybody was on board from day one. But there has to be somebody that was telling you not to do this.
Well, it's mainly our family on the board. However, first of all, fraud wasn't near as prevalent back then. We were charging off about 60,000 a year in fraud losses.
No, it's nothing.
And boy, if we tried to do this today, because you're learning how to manage the risk of it's learn as you go. I can't imagine what our losses would be today. But as far as the board goes, this is the key. Well, there's several keys. If you're going to get online and do this, the first thing you need to do is you need to make your internet division a branch of your bank. So on our software, branch 82 is Redneck Bank. We got 1 through 8 plus 82. We call it our national branch. And that's then, well, where's your branch? Your branch is your call center. So you put in a call center, which scared me the most. I didn't know how to do it, but Johnny said, "Oh, hey, I can do it for you." And and the third key is don't try to be everything to everybody. If you do what everybody else is doing, you're not going to make any money. And so we have two products. We have a checking account and a savings account. The more products you put out there, the worse your service is going to be. And so the key was we want them to go to Redneck. They like the name, so they go there. And the next click, they need to be opening an account. And so you want your website really thin. And then if they call the number, they get somebody in the call center who knows all about the website. And you don't have to transfer the call. Whoever answers can help you right at that time. In the old days, whoever was available in the branch location would answer the phone. Well, we learned real fast they knew nothing about what we were doing on the internet, and our service was horrendous. So you train your people in your call center to know that website inside and out. And when they answer the phone, well, first of all, you got to answer the phone. I call these other banks and you get a recorder. Well, we answer the phone every time, unless we're just overloaded, and then it may temporarily. But that would be very rare that a live person didn't answer the phone. So you answer the phone, and whoever answers it can help that person. That's key.
How much?
And don't have
How
a bunch
much?
of products on you.
And that
Go ahead.
makes I appreciate that. That makes tremendous amount of sense because you're streamlining everything. You're being super efficient. Keep it simple, stupid, right?
And educating through all the different levels, through
Yeah.
all the way down to that customer level.
Wade, how much
Right.
how much fraud are you seeing currently? Like with fake
We're
accounts trying to be opened
probably
online?
a lot. But I think we're losing more in our physical locations than we are on the internet. Uh, we're good at finding fraud on the internet. If 100 people open accounts or make application, 40 of those we don't open. That's
Wow.
how much fraud there is. There's stolen
Wow.
identities, and we have bank to bank transfer. So if we originate, or if one of our customers originates an ACH and sends it out of our bank to another bank, we're responsible for that for 2 months, 60 days, because our bank is the originator. And so you'll be cruising along thinking everything's fine, and 45 days later you go, oh, we have this $5,000 loss on this bank to bank transfer. And so it's quite complex. And so we use electronic systems to detect fraud, but a lot of it is manual. You pull up statement history and you look at what's going on in the account. Is this normal? That kind of thing, to try to identify what accounts are not real.
Yeah.
And so,
Can I ask,
yeah,
you are, as far as I know, or as far as we can tell, or as it seems, you're kind of alone in this unbelievably brave and bold marketing approach to who you are and how you do what you do.
yeah, we were
Um,
doing what we were. There's a couple of publicly traded banks that are based in Oklahoma. We were way ahead of them. We were opening accounts. We had bank to bank transfer. They didn't have that. We were doing things that they couldn't do. But
yeah, and
it
I
was
think
just,
the fact that you're succeeding, and we're talking about that success now, is absolutely, I think, confirming to the notion that doing something different pays off. Right, there is a risk there. You took the risk. You're making it work, and it's proving successful to your organization. In this really really unique branding, have you found any downside? Are there customers out there that say, "Well, I still see this as a joke. I'm not going with them at all," or has it just been pretty much a solid home run across the board?
okay. First of all, did I tell you 475 million in deposits? It's 275 million in
Okay.
deposits. I
That's
need to
still
make a
that's still
correction.
fantastic. But yeah,
Yeah.
400.
Tomato, tomato.
What's
Yeah.
the total deposit base of the bank?
I think we have about 530 million in deposits,
Okay,
but
so it's half
about
your
half
deposit
of them.
base. You have 8 branches in this internet bank, and it's half.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So think about what that does for your bank. We have about 500 million in loans. Well, we would only have 250 million in loans if we didn't have the internet.
Right.
So it doubles the amount of money that you can loan into your community. And don't think the big banks aren't taking money out of your own community, because they are. So it's our way of being able to fight back. But now you can dial up the interest rate, and it's like turning on a fire hose of deposits that start
Mhm.
flowing into your bank. Well, you darn sure better have a loan for that money to go in to, or you're going to lose money on
Yeah.
that. And so uh, you lower it, you lower the rate, then there's froth on top, and those people start leaving immediately. So you got to be sure you don't overshoot the runway
Yeah.
one way or the other. But if you need, the internet deposits are kind of the deposit of last resort. If if you need it, you probably need it because you're going to loan the money
Yeah.
on it, and you better have a loan,
It's a pendulum.
or you can't invest it for enough to make a spread.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't just go buy a treasury and make a spread because your interest rate's too high. It's very competitive on the internet. Our internet rates are higher than our local rates.
Yeah.
But anybody in our community is welcome to open an account on our internet.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so,
listen, Wade, we are running up against time. I do want to look. I do want
okay.
to touch kind of forward. And God, I almost said forward thinking. You guys are so forward thinking with what you're doing right now. It's crazy. But what if you have a message to your customers or to your staff, like what's the next big thing you guys are working on? Where's the bank headed?
Well, recently we're just under 600 million in total assets, but we blew right through 500 million. We were growing so fast. And when you go over 500 million, there's an extra level of regulatory requirements. You have to have audited financials and balance sheets and other audits. And we're trying to digest all of that right now. It's quite a painful step, or at least it has been for us to go over 500 million. So we don't have a huge growth strategy right now. And our growth strategy is probably, if we have a loan to make, we'll grow a little bit and we'll make that loan. But for the most part, we want to stay where we are until we can absorb all this new stuff that we're
Mm-hmm.
doing right now, which is regulatory
Yeah,
stuff.
very prudent strategy.